Nate, we had one of the worst Super Bowls I have ever watched in my life. The Eagles beat up on the Chiefs
Yeah,
40
yeah.
to 22 in dominating fashion. They stopped the first ever three-peat in the NFL. And Jalen Hurts won Super Bowl MVP. So, Nate, kind of give me your thoughts on the significance of this Super Bowl opposed to other ones. Saquon won a ring. Cooper DeJean got
Well,
defensive MVP. His first career interception was a pick six in the Super Bowl. So tell me everything about the Super Bowl, and then we'll go on and talk about what the title is about.
okay, so if we're gonna go about this, we're gonna go about it the right way. First and foremost, that Eagles defense, them dogs showed out. Um, Offense sells tickets, defense wins games and championships. That defense won that championship. Looking at the production of the defense, I mean, seven sacks, two interceptions, one touchdown. They were attacking. They hit Mahomes so much that game, and they were getting pressure off a regular four-man rush. And not to mention, I know the Giants. They still gonna have nightmares. They're going to have nightmares because Saquon won him a Super Bowl, and this game wasn't how people put it out as the Taylor Swift and Travis Kelsey. This game was about the Philadelphia Eagles going out there and dominating from the opening kickoff and to the end of the game. They dominated. Their defense played lights out. Amazing job by the defensive line, the defensive front. Amazing job calling and scheming by Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio, yeah. I mean, just a beautiful game, and you know, I want to give kudos to Jalen Hurts. I want to give kudos to Nick Sirianni as well, because remember last year, the Eagles had started off so fire. They were red hot. They were looking like they were in playoff mode early in the season, and then they hit this little brick wall, and they just faltered. And people were calling for Nick Sirianni to be fired. People were, calling for Jalen Hurts to get benched and all these things. But no, what they did was they improved that team. And Howie Roseman needs a Nobel Peace Prize or something for how he put this team together. But most importantly, I think Nick Sirianni, Jalen Hurts needs their flowers. I was glad to see Jalen got the Super Bowl MVP. He was well deserved. He was shaky at first. He made that one costly interception, but that defense, got the ball right back for the offense, and he just looked good. He looked good, and I'm just glad to see that he got the MVP, and they can take the criticism from him. They've criticized this man for since he came into the league, but now he's done the unthinkable and he's won him a Super Bowl. And it's going to be so much to talk about him winning a Super Bowl before Lamar Jackson, before Joe Burrow, before Josh Allen, the reigning MVP. You know what? Yes, Rob, take your comment back. Thank you.
I just want to point out last year when you lose to the Bucks the way they did in the playoffs, it didn't look like the same Eagles team we saw that
No,
made the Super Bowl the year
no.
before. This team was the best roster in the NFL by far. They had a hit on every single position. All their starters were fielded perfectly. But I want to mention something. People want to talk about Jalen Hurts. He had his best passing season last year. This year, he didn't even have 3,000 yards passing. But you have to understand, when you bring in someone like Saquon Barkley, when you make that free agent acquisition, it opens up the offense drastically than what Jalen Hurts was used to. He was used to playing in some two back, three back rotations with Boston Scott and Kenneth Gainwell and Miles Sanders. He never had somebody like Saquon in just a really a one back deal playing the majority of the game like Saquon does. When Saquon opens up the offense and Jalen Hurts fumbles or he does not succeed, that's when you can start calling him names or saying, okay, well, we might need to kind of think over who our starting quarterback is. But because Jalen Hurts perfectly and the most efficiently did what he did best as quarterback, I don't think you can take it from him because he had this entire gap to fill with his quarterback play, which was usually like this from last year. But when they got Saquon, it opened it up like this. And now you look at him and you say, okay, we only had 3,000 yards passing. His rushing game, it wasn't his tush-push rushing game we had last year, but he didn't make very many mistakes.
No, he didn't.
And that's what you have to judge him by. You can't judge him by the lack of production he had this year. You have to judge him by the mistakes because of how wide Saquon opened up that offense. That's the only way you can judge him now, is by his mistakes.
You know, and that's, again, this team was built for this run. How he has drafted. If you look at the last 3 drafts, they've drafted defensive linemen, they've drafted linebackers, DBs, and whatnot. Because again, you win the Super Bowl, you win championships off a strong defense. Because it's hard to beat a team if you can't score on this team. So again, then adding not a premier back, let's say a generational talent like Saquon Barkley. Listen, they put all their eggs in the basket. It was either win or go home. But you know what? I disagree too. I thought one of the D linemen should have got defensive MVP. Not even D lineman. I thought Vic Fangio should have got defensive MVP the way he called up that defense.
I mean, that whole line should have got something.
They should have got
that deep. It was Cooper's birthday, so you know how it is. Taylor Swift was shown about 30 times throughout the game, and people were booing her, and so it's just all publicity stunts. And you give Cooper DeJean the guy. We hadn't seen someone like him since Jason Sehorn. Think about that.
No, Adam Archuleta.
When was that?
2000 Rams. I think Sehorn was like the early 90s Giants.
I think Sehorn went into like 2003. He was good, wasn't he?
Really?
Yeah, he was good for a while. But I'm saying
we ain't
had anybody since then.
That's what I said. But that's why I said Adam Archuleta was cold in St. Louis.
One play doesn't make an MVP. Yeah, but you have to think about it. I'm just trying to play devil's advocate.
I'm telling you, I'm saying that D-line, that whole D-line should have got MVP.
I agree, but you have to think about it. The momentum shift, once that happened, it was done.
Well,
it was done. It was just done.
Well, hold on. If that's the case, then we got to say Zach Bond, because when he got that interception after they turned the ball over.
That was beautiful. Man, I wish he was. We're going to talk about that later tonight. But, Nate, if you're ready, we talked about the Super Bowl for a little bit, but I want to talk about the 2024 MVP. You talked about it. The reigning MVP is, of course, Josh Allen, but the NFL has to stop. We have to stop giving people MVP that have done nothing in the regular season and then go on and do nothing in the playoffs. Well, a championship isn't doing nothing, but...
Okay. I want you to cook this one.
I mean, it's a problem, Nate. It's a big problem. You're giving people that are not top 15 in quarterback stats the NFL MVP. If you look at the thumbnail for this show right here, if you look at the thumbnail for this show, I'm going to pull it up just real quick and show you just right here. Let me take off the banner real quick so you can see it. That is the rankings of Lamar Jackson's 2023 MVP and then Josh Allen's 2024 MVP. Neither of them were top 10 in passing yards. There is a narrative now that the MVP, the NFL MVP, you're muted, Nate, is a quarterback award. When you are not top 10 in a quarterback stat, how are you the most valuable player to your team? It makes no sense to me. It makes no sense to me. And this year, yes, I talked about Lamar Jackson last year. You're muted, Nate. You're muted. Okay. I talked about Lamar Jackson last year. And now I'm giving him his flowers this year because I think he got robbed. And Nate, if you're ready, I'm going to pull something up. I
Oh,
want you to
you
tell me in 2024 who's Josh Allen and who's Lamar Jackson.
go ahead. Come on, give it to me.
There you go. There's your clue.
Wait. Which one's which?
You got to tell me which one's which. Which one do you think Lamar Jackson? Which ones do you think Josh Allen? Which one do you think should win MVP?
Oh, I can tell you right now, the one to the left, and that's Lamar. I'm gonna tell you right now. You want to know how I know that? The very, very bottom where it says fantasy points. The very, very bottom where it says fantasy points. But let me tell you this. This is very reminiscent of, and you probably, Dad, Pops probably remembered this. 2000, I think it was 2000 or 2003. Peyton Manning shared the MVP award with the late great Steve
Steve
McNair.
McNair.
Catch this, catch this.
I think it was 03.
It was '03.
Think so. It wasn't
Robbie,
2000.
tell me, say, Dad, one of y'all tell us, was it '03 when Steve McNair and Peyton shared? Now, it's
Yeah.
funny because they gave Josh the MVP. He was second team All Pro. Lamar was first team, 2 votes from being unanimous All Pro. Now, the last person to win 3 back-to-back-to-back MVPs, if I'm not mistaken, was Aaron Rodgers. Before that was either Peyton Manning or Brett Favre.
Like 3 in a row?
3 in a row. Somebody go ahead and quote me on that one. I think
3
Aaron
in a
Rodgers was the
row?
last person to win 3 in a row. If it wasn't Aaron Rodgers before that, it had to be either Brett Favre or Peyton Manning.
Yeah. Brett Favre.
It
One of
was
them.
in the
Oh,
90,
well, he's one of them.
96,
Yeah, for sure.
97, 98.
He's one of them. But Nate, I'm going to put the stats right here. Lamar Jackson had over 5,000 yards total. Josh Allen had 4,200. 800 yards? 800 yards.
But go back to the stats. Pull the stats back up if you don't mind. I want to show you something else. Passing yards, 4,100 to 3,700. Been so many people that have criticized and been very critical of Lamar's passing. His passing yards per game, 245. Yards per pass attempt, 8.8. Okay, now hear me, just hear me. Percentage completion, 67%. Rushing yards, because again, one of the knocks on Lamar is the fact that how he runs the ball, and whatnot. But he's a playmaker. His quarterback rating, if you look at it, he's beating Josh and everything. Now, am I saying that Josh is undeserving? I think Josh should have won the MVP. I think maybe a year or two ago. Yeah, it was far. It was far 95, 97. I knew it was one of those. Um, but again, he's outplayed he's outplayed a lot of folks. If that was the case, if we're going to go based off numbers, pull up Joe Burrow's numbers,
That's what I'm telling you.
because Joe Burrow's numbers are out of this world. If we're
I
going to give the MVP award to the most valuable player,
should be Joe Burrow. I
it
agree.
should have been Joe Burrow. If we're going, the most valuable player last year was Joe Burrow, unanimous. But it's a disservice with the voters, because if you look at it, I'm going to give you this analogy. In the '90s, you know who the best basketball player was in the '90s?
Michael Jordan.
But they couldn't give Michael Jordan the MVP every year, even though he was the best player in the NBA. And his teams, they won 6 titles. You know, but they couldn't keep giving him the MVP because it really wasn't fair, even though he was the most superior athlete. Lamar has been the best quarterback. Now, let me take that back. He's been the best player in the NFL for the last couple of years, because I can't say he's the best quarterback in the NFL, because that's a debate that I mean, I can have, but I don't want to because we're talking about the Joe Burrows of the world, the Patrick Mahomes. Even though Patrick has had some down years and whatnot, he's still one of the best at what he does. You know, um, but if we're giving the award to the most valuable player is in Cincinnati this season.
I
He
agree.
was he was the best player, and the thing that sucks and is just very disheartening is that because his team was not good, he's not worthy of the MVP award, and they have to change the concept and they got to change the dynamic of the voting because we're talking about the most valuable player. It shouldn't matter. Heisman Trophy is given to the best player in all of college football, is it not?
Yeah, and you don't even have to make the playoffs and you'll still win Heisman. That's what I love about the Heisman.
Travis Hunter was the best player in college football last year, and his team didn't make it to playoffs. If we go to the year before, or when Lamar won the Heisman Trophy, Louisville wasn't a team in the NCAA.
They
Robert
lost
Griffin,
to old
you know
Mississippi State.
exactly. Robert Griffin, they weren't top five. Baylor wasn't top five. Like it's a disservice because we're talking about the best players and of the season. Give it men lie, women lie, numbers don't. Joe Burrow's numbers were MVP worthy numbers. That's even we go last year. I know I probably should have texted you this earlier. Dak Prescott, I hate the Cowboys. Dak Prescott numbers were they not MVP worthy?
Yeah, they were.
And last year Lamar won the MVP, did he not?
Yes, he did. And it was about a 800-yard difference, just like we're seeing today.
So
But what did I tell you at the beginning of the season, though? The
mm,
media is
the
going to
media,
push
the
this
media, the
MVP
media don't.
narrative just like they did with Lamar, so that when Josh Allen's name was called on NFL Honors Night, it's okay, well, this makes sense. No, it doesn't. It does not make sense. If you watch the NFL and you watch throughout the season and you know ball, you know for a 100% fact Josh Allen was not the MVP. He wasn't top 3 in MVP voting. He might have not been top 5 in MVP. But he got it because the media pushed this narrative, and now everybody's okay with it because it makes the least amount of people upset. But people like me, people like you, Nate, it's a disservice. You're right. And Joe Burrow, you can call me salty, whatever you want. He's a modern day Drew Brees. The amount of times Drew Brees
Hey,
had the best stats in
hey,
the league and has
that's
never
one
won
player.
anything.
That's one player who the voters should be ashamed of themselves because there's no reason that Drew Brees shouldn't have at least one MVP in his home. Just like, in basketball, I say there's no reason that Dwayne Wade shouldn't have at least one MVP. You know, Drew Brees has had, I'd say 2009, 2000, or 2010, after Kobe had won his MVP, I'd say that next, because D Wade led the league in scoring in the NBA for a couple years, but going back to football, I'm sorry. Um, Drew Brees, if I'm not mistaken, is the first quarterback since Dan Marino to go throw back to back to back 5,000-yard seasons. Somebody find that out for me. His
Dan Marino only has one
he
5,000
only had
yard
one.
season in 1984. Drew Brees, there's only
Ha-
3 quarterbacks that has more than 2. Brady,
Peyton,
Mahomes, and Breeze. No, not even. Peyton
no.
Manning only has one 5,000
So
yards, and he did it when he beat Drew Brees by one passing touchdown for the record.
okay,
Drew Brees
okay.
is the only player to have more than 2, and it's with 6. I mean, maybe Patrick Mahomes has. Patrick Mahomes doesn't have 3. There's no way.
He
It's got
might
to be.
have.
It's got to be
He might.
Brady and Mahomes with 2.
Look,
Let me look
you
at it.
looking? Are you looking? Are you looking?
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's the right statistic. Brady and Mahomes are the only 2 with just 2, and Drew Brees is the only one
But
with
that's a
more
dis.
than 2.
But then
But
going
that's
back to what I
6
said.
years. That's 6
But
years,
that's
Nate.
but going against
Six.
going to what I said. That is a disservice to the game right there because Drew Brees has put up crazy numbers. He actually led a team to the Super Bowl, and they knocked off the Indianapolis Colts, who were highly favored
By a large margin.
by a large margin.
He, Oh man, get me started.
You know, I know. I listen. I'm a historian and fan of the game. So this whole idea that again, the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. They should have gave they should have gave the MVP to Joe Burrow. They could have gave the MVP to Saquon Barkley if that's the case.
He
But
got his award though. He got his
he got
award.
the Super Bowl. That's all he cared about.
We got offensive player of the year.
I mean, yeah. But how many times do we see running backs rush for 2,000 yards?